Hello and yes, welcome back to another video, guys. And that's right, today we're back to do a ranking of the 13 Star Trek movies. Why? This probably seems like a very random time to do them, even though they are coming up to their anniversaries, of course. And that is partially the reason why I'm doing it, because I was lucky enough to go see Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, in its rerun at the cinema just over a week ago, and it was fantastic. And before I saw that, I rewatched the original motion picture, and then I carried on and went all the way through to Star Trek Nemesis, the final one with the Next Generation crew, and I'm very familiar with the new three. So basically I've just done a huge Star Trek rewatch, so I thought what a perfect time to come on and talk about these movies. And some of you might know my opinions on them, because I've been logging them on Letterboxd as I watch them, so some of you are probably going to know what's coming, and I want to clarify this before we get going. I'm very familiar with the new three, because I saw them in the cinema. They were my introduction to Star Trek, I'm not going to lie. But with the older Star Trek films, it's only my second time watching them. I'm sure there will be many bigger and more knowledgeable Star Trek people watching this video. So if I say something wrong, if I miss something, please, I apologise. I'm not a huge Star Trek expert. As I say, only my second time watching the original 10 movies, so, yeah. But this is going to be my ranking from my least favourite to my favourite. So, yeah, we're going to crack on. What I'm going to do is, I'm gonna shift along here so we can see the lovely movie posters. And also, remember, guys, this is just my opinion, so apologies if I say something that's... I don't know how controversial this list is going to be, to be honest. As I say, not super familiar with Star Trek overall, so anyway, let's crack on. My least favourite, coming in 13th place, is going to be Star Trek The Final Frontier. This is, of course, the 5th Star Trek movie, the one directed by Mr. William Shatner himself. And yeah, the reason it's last is because it is so forgettable. Like, nothing happens in this movie, really, in the grand scheme of things. Like, the villain, isn't it Spock's half-brother or something? I can't even remember. And I watched it in the last week. It's just, compared to all the other Star Trek films I've been watching, this one here just completely... As soon as I watched it, I forgot it instantly. There are so many terrible scenes. The bit at the start with Captain Kirk rock climbing, and then he falls, but, like, Spock's there on his hover boots, but his boots are out of frame, and then he sort of dives down, and his boots come up and go straight down. It's just some of the most terrible filmmaking I think I've seen. And I'm guessing William Shatner just directed this movie because they wanted to make the movie, no one wanted to do it, and he was like, fine, I'll do it. I'll have to do it if we want the movie to be made. I'm guessing so, because as a director, he was pretty terrible here. And I like William Shatner. The man's grown on me a lot over the recent couple of years. I really do like him as Captain Kirk, and he is great in this role, but it just seems like there's nothing going on. Also, it's just so many weird things, like Scotty is just a complete bumbling joke in this one. Ahura, doing some sexy dance to try to entice some men. It was kind of cringe and hard to watch. Yeah, there's just, you know, the whole kind of search for God as well. This film just really wasn't that good. I'm sorry, I just didn't enjoy this one. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 10. Next up, the other one here, which I'm going to struggle to talk about because it's just so forgettable. And that is Star Trek Insurrection, the 9th movie. Yeah, I mean, I thought this movie was so forgettable. They kind of tried to do a Voyage Home thing, a bit of time travel here. And, you know, they go back to the history of humans going to the stars and stuff, which was kind of cool. And I liked all that side of it. But the main villain and whatnot, when they were in present day, it was just so... I didn't really care what was happening. It wasn't that intense, and the stakes didn't seem very high. I know that they were, but the movie just didn't really tell that very well. I thought the editing was so sloppy. Again, I know that these movies were coming out as the show was airing, but it felt like a really long TV episode and not in a good way. And I think that's honestly the best way I could describe this episode. And some members of the crew just virtually had nothing to do in this one, at least with like the original 4 Star Trek films and then the 6th one, so I enjoy that as well. Leaving out 5 there. All of the crew members would have something to do, it seems, throughout the movies. Here, there are some crew members that I just sort of forgot existed. They just pop up every now and then with a line of dialogue. So yeah, didn't enjoy this one much. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Next up, coming in 11th place, we have the 10th Star Trek film, Nemesis. Yes, the final Next Generation crew. Now, this one it started okay. I like the whole wedding start, and you actually felt a little bit more connected to the crew members here than the 9th movie. And it seems like they all had something to do. And honestly, the film just sort of then just fizzles out and does exactly what the last film does. It becomes like a TV movie. And it felt like it in a bad way. Just really, really sloppy editing. Not very good pacing. But then you get to the end of the movie, and there's a bit of an emotional oomph to it, which really made it better than Insurrection. I genuinely, with this one, was like, okay, that wasn't too bad, actually, at the end there. But for me, as I say, it opens well. I don't even want to say the whole first act's good, because it's not. Like, it just opens well. And I really enjoyed the final act of the movie. So, for the majority of the movie, I was kind of pretty bored through this one as well. And yeah, it's a shame. I feel like Data, the character, the robot, the android guy, he's a character who, I know people really like him, but, you know, we'll talk about the first 2 Generation films in a minute. He's a character that which I was struggling to connect with a bit just through the movies. Here, I'd really started to like him and some other members of the crew as well. So it's a shame that it took till the last film for me to really start connecting with some of the crew members. But nevertheless, this film definitely has some positives about it. But overall, I was pretty bored for a lot of it. So I'm going to give this film a 4.5 out of 10. Next up, we have a movie which I once hated. And on rewatch, I've gained a bit of appreciation for it. And that is Star Trek, the Motion Picture. The first movie, of course. This film was heavily influenced by 2001: Space Odyssey, I believe. It has a very similar structure to it, pacing, style. And the thing I really appreciate about this movie is it really tries to be something special. And I think that's what I didn't appreciate the first time when I watched it. Whereas now I'm like, do you know what? Some of the cinematography is really nice. Some of the effects are good. And the tension building is brilliant. It's fantastic. And I really do believe that this film starts off well. Like getting the crew back together and stuff. Actually making this threat coming towards Earth seem big and bad. I thought that was excellent. They nailed all of that. But then, again, the film just fizzles out. It's too long. And when you actually discover what the threat is, for me, it's just very underwhelming. And, yeah, it really bogged the film down, which is a shame. Because, this is coming off the back of huge releases. Like, Star Wars had just come out. This is Star Trek's time to get back in the game. And they really could have done something great here. And I just feel like maybe they went a bit too hard. It's too long. The pacing in the back half of the movie is terrible. Very underwhelming, unsatisfying ending. And yeah, shame. Because there's a really good movie in here. But unfortunately, we're left with a pretty sloppy one. I'm going to give this film a 4.5 out of 10. Then we have Star Trek Generations. Again, very similar feelings as in, there's a really great movie in here, but we didn't get it. I love the idea of, this is the next generation. This is it. We're here with the new crew. But we're going to start off with Kirk, Sulu, and Scotty. We're going to start off with a couple of the old crew members, and then we're going to hand the torch over, and we're going to have a little crossover there with Picard and Kirk. Fantastic. Love that. That's such a cool way to pass the torch. Something you don't really see franchises doing too much. And when you do it, when we do see it, it's normally like older versions of the characters. Whereas here it's like, no, we've got Kirk from, however long ago, travelled through time to meet Picard. So we're getting the best of both of them, sort of. And that was fantastic. And that's why, again, this movie I like. This is the first movie here we're talking about that I do like. Because it opens really well. The opening is fantastic. And in the final act is really fun as well. And I like the villain in this movie. But the middle section of the film, where it's more or less just the Next Generation crew, again, I just wasn't super interested. And I don't think it's the crew, because I do like them and I hear the show's amazing. Yes, I haven't seen the show. I probably should. I apologise. But they're just not given loads to do, some of them. It's always Kirk, Data, the Klingon guy, who are more or less doing everything. Number one pops up every now and then. But yeah, and again, this is the one where I really found Data kind of annoying. Again, some people might like this, I don't know. The whole motion chip that goes in him and him bursting out laughing every 5 seconds really got on my nerves after a while. And Kirk's death, I don't know, I feel like it could have been a bit bigger and grander. It's Captain Kirk, but I don't know. It was a decent movie. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. Just could have been better. There's a great film in there with that one. And then next up, we have the first of the new three, Star Trek Beyond, which I've seen probably 5 or 6 times over the years. I saw it in cinema on release. I was very excited for this film, and this film gets a lot of shit. And I gotta say, every time I watch it, and I will be rewatching the new three, hopefully next week. Probably should have waited to do this video, but while the older ones are fresh, I wanted to make this video. Every time I watch it, I remember this isn't near as bad as some people make out. There are definitely some problems with it. It's the weakest of the modern three for me. But it's still a good movie. The action sequences are great. I like the fact that it feels like old Star Trek, as in every now and then we'll get a Star Trek movie where it's like we're going to ground the characters. And this is that one where we ground them. The villains were pretty cool. Maybe a little bit weak motivation from some of them. And a couple twists there, which were a little bit predictable, I thought. But the effects were great. And I'm going to mention it, the makeup and costumes were brilliant. How it didn't win the Oscar. And Suicide Squad won it over it. I don't know, it's baffling still. But yeah, I love the crew in this one. I love the modern actors they picked to play these characters. I think they've done a brilliant job. I want to say Carl Urban, because my favourite character is Bones. In all of Star Trek. I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion or not. I don't know. I feel like most people are going to go Kirk or Spock, but I love Bones. But Carl Urban as a modern pick for him is just brilliant. So yeah, I really do like this film. It's really good. I'm looking forward to rewatching it again soon. I'm going to give this film, I'm going to go 7 out of 10. But yeah, I was going to go 6.5, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to go 7. Why not? It deserves it. Then we have First Contact. I nearly said the title completely wrong there. First Contact. The second Next Generation crew film and the last Next Generation crew film we're going to talk about here. As you can see, these films didn't sit as well with me as the other ones. But this is definitely the best of them for me. You know, the Borg. I was fully aware of the Borg even before watching this film the first time. I knew that they were like the big Next Generation villain. Of course, the Klingons and humans have made peace, I think, at this point. In the Star Trek universe, so the Borg are the new villains. And they're pretty cool. They remind me a lot of like the Cybermen from Doctor Who, and they look awesome, they sound cool. And I like in this one, they sort of gave them like, I forget what she was called, but she was like a queen. She was like the top Borg. Because they're all like a collective mind, aren't they, I think? You know, they're all sort of thinking the same thing. Whereas here you've got one superior who's in charge. And I quite like that. There was a good aspect about it. Not sure about her getting it on with Data again, though. That bit pulled me out. But it's a lot of fun, this one. It's edited so much better than the other three. It just feels like this one, a lot more effort went into it. Some of the effects are really cool. I love the Borg ship. And they feel like a threat as well, which I like. Which a lot of the villains before we talked about Beyond didn't have. They didn't feel that threatening. Whereas here, the Borg do feel threatening. And a lot of the action's great. The crew are all given stuff to do. It feels like a bit more of a collective team effort from all of the members here. Yeah, this is a good movie. This is definitely the best Next Generation movie for me. And I'm guessing it probably will be amongst fans. I can't see how... Maybe... I could maybe get people putting Generations over it because of the handing of the torch and the nostalgia there. But this is definitely better than the other two, right? But I'm going to give this film a 7 out of 10 as well. Really, really good film. Okay, next up, we have Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. So, I was so excited to watch this film after I come out of Wrath of Khan at the cinema. I think I literally watched this like the day after. I was like, oh my god, I need to carry on. I knew what happened, obviously. I'd seen these movies before. But I just couldn't remember anything about it. I couldn't remember where Spock was. I mean, obviously they tease where he is in Wrath of Khan, but in my mind, I was obviously, because I watched these films before Like, the first time I watched them was like 5 or 6 years ago. I couldn't remember if this was the one where they looked for God or something getting back. So I was getting, like, films sort of mixed up in my head. So I was really excited to rewatch it. And do you know what? I had a really good time with it. I love how they sort of put Spock's mind in Bones's, and then they had to go get the body. And there was some really cool aspects there. It was really great at the start, just seeing them, like, you know, disobeying protocol. They were told they couldn't leave, you know, their headquarters to go find Spock, so they had to escape themselves. And that stuff was all great. That felt so Star Trek-y, so sci-fi. I loved it. It was brilliant. And then, yeah, the actually having a Klingon as a villain was really cool, because obviously everyone knows they're the big overall Star Trek villains. And, you know, the first 2 movies didn't really have any Klingon. I mean, I know they appeared at the start of... Is it Wrath of Khan? Oh, no. Was it the first one they appeared in at the start? I think it was the first one. Anyway, but there's very little Klingon, basically, in the first 2 movies. So it's cool to finally have one as a villain. And, you know, the emotional impact with Kurt's son's death as well. Very cool. And the end of the movie was very touching as well. So I do really like The Search for Spock. I'm going to give this film a 7 out of 10 as well. Giving out a few 7s today. And next up, we have Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. This is another one I really didn't like the first time I watched it, just because it didn't feel very Star Trek-y to me, and it still doesn't in the grand scheme of things, because, you know, we're in, well, back then, present day, 1986, maybe? 4 or 6? I can't remember. And there's no Enterprise. They're on a Klingon ship. So, yeah, and there's a lot of just very normal stuff going about. So it doesn't really feel like Star Trek, which is why I don't think I liked it much the first time. Whereas this time I think I appreciate it a lot more. It was actually kind of a clever story, the time travel and stuff, and they had to get something from the past, which was supposedly meant to be extinct in the future. And, you know, they used whales for that. Humpback, I think it was a humpback whale they used. So, yeah, it was cheesy as hell plot, very silly, but it was fun. And that's the thing, I take this film more as a comedy movie, because seeing these characters put in the real world and seeing how they interact with things was actually really funny. And I know it would never happen, but it's something interesting, like, oh, I wonder if we could take characters from, like, Lord of the Rings or Star Wars and pop them in modern day and just see how they would interact with things. It's a very cool concept, which they clearly had a lot of fun with. And, yeah, I think at the end, I think where the film maybe fell a little bit short for me was, like, they obviously wanted to have a bit of a villain near the end, and they just had some hunters going after the whales. And it was like, that wasn't very anticlimactic, but, yeah, overall, it is a fun movie. I actually do like it's grown on me a lot with rewatch, like a lot of these original movies. So I'm going to give this film 7 out of 10 as well. And that might be a bit low, because I know some people absolutely love this movie. But yeah, for me, I really enjoy it, but for me, it doesn't scream Star Trek like some of the ones we've already talked about and the ones we're going to talk about. But it's a very entertaining movie nevertheless. So coming in 4th place, we have Star Trek Into Darkness. So this film here I was so excited to see, because I love the original Star Trek, which we'll get to very shortly. And I was just so excited to see where we were going next. I heard that Khan was like the most popular villain from the old films. So I was so excited to see that. And Benedict Cumberbatch playing him. This is before, obviously, Doctor Strange. So what do I know Benedict Cumberbatch from? Sherlock. I was like, oh my god, it's that guy. And he was really good in this as Khan. And he was so threatening. And he was a smart villain. And that's what I like about this movie. It's very intelligent in the way it progresses its story. It doesn't go in the generic way you think it would. There is a lot of layers to it. And it puts characters through the blender. Like, they go through some emotional stuff in this one. And it's great. It all works really, really well. I think where maybe this film falls a little bit flat is there is a lot going on. And at times it seems to all happen a bit quick. I feel like maybe this film could have done with being a little bit longer. Because it does feel a little bit choppy at times. But overall, it's got a lot of great action sequences. It's really fun. And again, I can't wait to rewatch this one. And that classic Spock shouting Khan at the end, which is taken straight from the original. Love that. And I do love how, especially the first 2 of the new Star Trek films, parallel what happens with the original Star Trek crew. I think that's fantastic. So yeah, I'm going to give this film a 7.5 out of 10. Really good movie. 3rd place, right, we're into the top 3. So 3rd place is going to go to This might be a surprising one, actually. Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country. Yeah, this is like really, really good, this one, surprisingly. Maybe it's because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, because this one very much parallels what was going on over there. Loads of aliens and stuff. We're on an alien planet. Feels alien. Alien prison. Just a whole bunch of different species walking about. I love all that stuff. But at the same time, there's a whole political element side to it, which I really, really enjoyed as well. And it feels very smart as well. So there's like this whole layer of, okay, we're going to try and make peace with the Klingons, but there's some bad Klingons out there, or some bad people who don't want this treaty to sort of happen. So they frame Kirk and Bones, and we get a really, really interesting movie here. And there's a lot of layers to it. And it feels like while Kirk and Bones are on the planet, and a lot of the focus of the movie is on them, the crew of the Enterprise, Spock and stuff, they've still got plenty of stuff to do, and their story is still very interesting. Bit predictable on the Enterprise, who was sort of the traitor amongst them. But other than that, I thought this film was great, like really entertaining. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in it. I'm going to give this film a 7.5 out of 10 as well. Then, top two. So this is probably going to be controversial, because it's not number one. But I've gone with Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan as my second favourite Star Trek film. Yeah, I'd say I saw this in cinema. Seeing it on the big screen, of course, was fantastic. I just love this movie. I think it is really, really fantastic. I love how it picks up after the first one. And you see Spock have to... you have to see Kirk take Captain's reign of the Enterprise again. Khan is a really fun villain. He's really cheesy. But he's very cool. And I love the whole dynamic between him and Kirk. Their interactions are great when they're on screen together. And again, the plot is really cool, how it isn't just bad guy versus good guy. There's this whole side plot where, you know, you've got the Genesis project, and there's a lot of controversy about what is that? Is this actually a good thing? You know, is it technically in the hands of you know, the Federation, and, you know, should we have this and stuff? So there's a lot of layers to this movie, which I really, really enjoyed. So yeah, and again, the pacing was brilliant, the runtime was great. It's a really fantastic movie, one of the all-time sci-fi classics. So yeah, I'm going to give this film an 8 out of 10. It's a really good film. But then coming in first place is the film which got me into Star Trek. It was the first Star Trek film I saw, and I watched it so much when it came out. My mum bought me home the DVD of it, and I must have watched it about 50 times. So there's probably a bit of biasness here. But I genuinely believe it's easily top 3 for me, even if I put my biasness aside. But it is, of course, Star Trek, the 2009 reboot, starring Chris Pine, directed by J.J. Abrams. I never thought I'd be sick. I don't like praising J.J. Abrams anymore, not after The Rise of Skywalker. But, you know, he did do a great job with this movie, and it is fantastic. And I think, you know, while The Wrath of Khan might be better, technically, I think this one's, for me, just hits so many good notes. And even though I didn't appreciate some of the things at the time when I first saw it, I can appreciate them now, like how well it connects these films to the originals, because they are connected. It's a parallel world. We get to see Leonard Nimoy return as Spock. Fantastic. The casting as well is spot on for the characters. Absolutely incredible. And the effects are brilliant. One thing I didn't really mention earlier when I was talking about the Next Generation films is, you know, these films were coming out in the late 90s and early 2000s, and the effects look terrible for the most part. And I think that's purely because they weren't given a big budget. Here, it's nice to see them finally give a big budget to Star Trek, because the effects look incredible. It's just such an intelligent plot as well. Really well done. It's one of the best reboots I've ever seen for a franchise. So yeah, that film can have an 8.5 out of 10 for me. I'm being probably a little bit kind there. Probably should be an 8, but I don't care. I love this movie. I can't wait to rewatch it, because it is the next one up for me to rewatch. But yeah, there we go. There we go. I talked about Star Trek instead of Star Wars for once. Yeah, I've really, really enjoyed my Star Trek rewatch of the original 10. It's something which I wasn't sure I'd ever do, to be honest, but it's been a lot of fun. I know there's going to be people in the comments going, watch the show. Obviously, the show's a bigger commitment, but it's something I might do one day. But for right now, I've really enjoyed my Star Trek rewatch. I've had so much fun with it. And I've gained a lot of appreciation for other than number 5, the original 6 movies with the original crew. And I did enjoy the Next Generation ones as well for the most part. Just those last 2 lost me a bit. But yeah, overall, very solid series of films. I'm very happy to have rewatched them. And yeah, I'm really hoping now that we get a 4th one of the new crew, because I'm just so into Star Trek in a minute. Yeah, I want to see more Star Trek. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. I hope you've enjoyed as always. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like the video, leave a message. And as always, I'll see you next time for another video. Bye-bye.